Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Well, let me begin by thanking our friends in the media for joining us both virtually and some of us who are here in person for this media briefing on, as J6P has mentioned, international cooperation. Of course, we also appreciate your being here at relatively short notice. You are aware of the context. We are facing an unprecedented second wave of the pandemic. As of now, we have over 3 million active cases. This has obviously put considerable pressure on our healthcare system, on the capacities and resources that we have. Government has been, in many senses, very quick to try and make an assessment of where we have capacity shortfalls, where we have a requirement to meet on an urgent basis. Based on some of these considerations, the Ministry of External Affairs was charged with trying to find the most effective means of addressing those resource constraints. We have, of course, been part of a larger, I would say, interagency and interministerial consultation in this regard. These consultations are guided by the very highest levels. The Prime Minister has personally given his direction and guidance on many of the areas that we are dealing with. The group of ministers has been involved integrally in the process. Our own Minister, External Affairs Minister, has personally been involved in overseeing the process in our ministry. You saw that last evening or last night, late last night, he had a video conference with all of our heads of missions all over the world, with the objective of not only briefing them, but also directing them on what they need to do in terms of the highest priorities attached to our domestic considerations with regard to meeting the requirements of our health system today. We have, as I mentioned, prioritized certain areas. I think oxygen, liquid oxygen is one of the areas that has been a priority. We've also seen the requirement for anything that produces, equipment that produces oxygen, oxygen generators, oxygen concentrators, oxygen producing equipment, cryogenic tankers, transportation equipment for oxygen. We've also needed some urgent pharmaceutical products like remdesivir and tocilizumab, which is also a drug that is quite urgently required. Although we produce remdesivir, but given the requirements, obviously the production has not been adequate to meet the immediate shortfall. So in all of this, I think we did call upon our missions, in particular the ones that were really in countries that had the capacity to meet our priority items. This has been, as I said, it's been a very high priority. The Ministry of External Affairs has attached the greatest importance to this effort. As you're aware, we had OSD, Special Secretary Dammu Ravi, who's been dealing with the COVID issues. But we've also deployed a number of our younger officers to work with him so that we have quick responses. We have people who are working 24/7 on this issue. We have a number of other officers dealing with other areas. I want to just, for your benefit, categorize what are the different areas that we are working on. One is that we are looking at government-to-government sourcing. In other words, government has an empowered group, which is Empowered Group 2, which, as you know, is headed by currently by the Secretary of the Ministry of Transport and Highways. This group has been engaged with seeing how we can quickly source, bulk oxygen, bulk liquid oxygen, etc. And they've done some very commendable work in getting some immediate results in that area. The second is an area in which we have actually received offers of assistance from various governments. We've been, actually there has been quite an outpouring of, I would say, solidarity with India. There's been outpouring of, let's say, assistance from various countries. Over 40 countries have actually committed to provide us with many of the items that we need most urgently. I'll try and give you some more details on that. The third area is in terms of procurement by Indian corporates. Many of the larger Indian companies who are already very integrated into supply chains globally, have been sourcing equipment on the lines that I mentioned quickly from their sources of supply, and we've already again seen some results in that regard. The fourth area is international corporates. In the US, for example, a very large number of corporates have come together under the auspices of the State Department and some government facilitation to offer assistance through their own resources. We've seen that also in other countries. And finally, Indian community associations, individuals who have, I think from all over the world come forward to say that what can we do to assist. So we are getting offers which are from different parts of the world. Our objective is to ensure that we channelize all of this assistance that is both sought by us and being received in a manner that is as effective as possible. In other words, how do we receive it? How do we ensure that we facilitate quick clearance? And not only that, we ensure that all of this is taken to different parts of the country where it is needed most critical areas. In that context, of course, we have had very strong interministerial and interagency cooperation. Cabinet Secretary has been overseeing this process himself. We've also had the representatives of a number of other ministries, obviously the Health Ministry, Pharmaceuticals, Home Ministry, Civil Aviation, Ministry of Defense, Biotechnology, a range of ministries, agencies, finance, I shouldn't forget, have been involved in this effort. What we want to make sure is that all this equipment that is consigned to India, to the government of India, is expeditiously cleared. There are blanket exemptions from the different taxes, customs duties and taxes that they would have to normally undergo if such items were coming into India, how they can be quickly cleared. But also, most important is logistically, when we are talking about heavy equipment, oxygen generating plants, how these are taken to different parts, as I said, of the country where it's most needed. And this is something that has been quite a major effort. I mean, we want to make sure that this process is smooth right from the point that we identify sources of supply to the point that it actually reaches those of our citizens that need these items and this sort of assistance the most. So you can imagine that this is a very high priority, and this is something that we give the greatest importance to. The normal procedure is that when a certain consignment has to come to India, it is consigned to the Indian Red Cross Society. The Indian Red Cross Society receives all these items on behalf of the government of India. And then, as I said, we have an entire team that takes this over. This is mainly the Ministry of Health that identifies what has to be done, but there is a lot of logistical support by a company associated with Ministry of Health and the Department of Military Affairs to see that the equipment is very quickly placed where we need to have it placed. Just to give you some sense of where we are, we've got already a number of items that have come in. For example, the first flight that came in, I think many of you would have seen, was on the 27th of April, the night of 27th April from the UK, which brought in a number of oxygen concentrators, ventilators, and other equipment. Last night we had a flight from Russia, actually two aircraft, special aircraft that came in from Russia that brought very large number of oxygen generating equipment. That means plants that generate oxygen. We had some 20 of those plants. We also have had a lot of ventilators, bedside monitors. Russia also gave us Favipiravir, which is, in some senses, again, antiviral for COVID-19 treatment. We are also expecting tomorrow and over the next couple of days, 3 flights, special flights from the United States. You would have seen that President Biden spoke to Prime Minister. He offered extensive assistance. You would have seen the details of that assistance also from the United States. And of course, that assistance also went into areas like raw materials for our vaccine industry, etc. But the US is going to provide, at an initial basis, at least 3 of these aircraft coming in with much needed oxygen equipment and concentrators, other areas that we need assistance. We will also have, we have a special cargo flight that is arriving tonight, I believe, from UAE, again with ventilators and carrying Favipiravir medicines. Just going back quickly to the US, I talked about the 3 flights that are coming in. The first one, which is tomorrow, 2 flights tomorrow, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And on the 3rd of May, we will have a 3rd flight. They will carry with them very large number of, as I mentioned to you, oxygen generating equipment. There will also be 2,000 oxygen concentrators, 500 oxygen cylinders, and I would say that capacity to provide 28 million liters of oxygen. Again, very much needed help both in terms of cylinders, in terms of actual oxygen, but also, most importantly, oxygen generating equipment that is very much needed. We also have a flight from Ireland coming in with 700 concentrators. France has also been very active. I think their flight will also be coming in on Saturday. As I said, over 40 countries, and these are not just developed countries. Our neighbors, Mauritius, Bangladesh, Bhutan, have all come forward to offer assistance in their in whichever capacity is possible, and we have got a lot of assistance also, and commitments of assistance from different parts of the world, from Europe, from the Gulf region, UAE, I mentioned, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, but also Europe and even further parts of the world, from Australia, New Zealand, and countries like Guyana, which are located geographically further away. All of this is very important because this has to be coordinated very carefully, and we have to ensure that whatever comes in is something which is not only required by us, obviously, but also is prioritized quickly. This, in a nutshell, is really what we wanted to give you a sense of. If you want an overall sense of what is coming, in terms of oxygen generating plants, we are talking about over 500 plants. In fact, we are talking about close to 550 oxygen generating plants that are going to come in from different sources from all over the world. As I said, it is those that we are purchasing, it is those that are being provided by corporates, by governments, by private individuals, by community associations. It's a mix of all that, but we are looking at over 500 oxygen generating plants coming in the next few days and weeks. We are looking at about over 4,000 oxygen concentrators. That these are very, very essential for what we're doing now. We are looking at over 10,000 oxygen cylinders, which are also in some senses in short supply. 17 oxygen cryogenic tankers, some of which have already come in. You've seen the Air Force has flown in some of these tankers from Thailand, Singapore, etc. And of course, Gilead Sciences has offered us 450,000 doses of remdesivir, very, very essential in today's context. We also have been offered 300,000 doses of Favipiravir, some from Russia, as I mentioned, but also from the UAE and other countries. Tocilizumab is very essential again, very part of our priority list, and we are going to get tocilizumab from Germany, from Switzerland. Roche has also agreed to expedite their raw material supplies for the production of some of our very essential drugs, and so has Gilead Sciences. So we are also expediting raw material supplies, not only for the production of remdesivir, but also in terms of vaccines. So what I want to say is that all in all, this is very vital part of our, the international cooperation is a vital part of our, meeting and bridging the immediate requirements that we have. Obviously, we are making every effort to step up our own capacities. For example, my colleague, Secretary Pharmaceuticals, told me that we normally manufacture 67,000 doses of remdesivir a day. Our 7 manufacturers of remdesivir that are authorized manufacturers by Gilead Sciences, but the requirement today might be between 2 to 3 lakhs a day. So we have to bridge the gap, and this gap is this is something that our producers are well aware of. They are actually ramping up their production. We've had a meeting which our minister himself took, which the cabinet secretary also took, with all producers, and we find that they are ready to go from 67,000 to 3 lakhs, even 4 lakhs a day. They need the raw material inputs, they need the support, and that is something that is coming in the fullest possible way. We've got all assurances from Gilead, from the US government that whatever requirements are there, we will try and meet it to the best of ability. As you know, we are also in touch with other manufacturers of remdesivir in Egypt, in other parts of the world to see whether we can source this from those countries, and we are working on making sure that those gaps are met. So what we are talking about is short-term gaps. We're not even talking about the medium term. I think by the medium term, our own domestic industry would have been up to the task. You have seen that when we had the first wave, there was a shortage of masks, PPEs, ventilators. In a short while, we went from being net importers to net exporters. Test kits, for example, today we are producing enough test kits for ourselves and different parts of the world. I would say that the same thing will be seen in terms of production of remdesivir, in terms of production of some of the oxygen generating equipment. If you see in oxygen terms also, from our health authorities have made a very detailed presentation where it's very clear that our capacities have been ramped up even in the first few days of the second wave. And we have also diverted oxygen that normally goes to industrial units for medical uses. But there are logistical challenges. Much of the oxygen produced is in the eastern part of the country, whereas demand is primarily in the western and northern parts of our country. So we have to match the supply source with the demand source. We need equipment, transportation equipment to do it, and therefore cryogenic tankers and the Air Force, Indian Air Force has come in terms of making sure that there is enough capacity to do that. I must end our opening remarks by saying that all of our missions and all of our ambassadors have been very receptive, extremely adept in meeting the requirements of the day. We've established contact directly with Gilead, with Roche, with all of the companies that are involved. We're working with governments, we're working with the private sector, we're working with associations, we're working with chambers of commerce. We are giving the topmost priority to meeting our requirements, our immediate requirements in terms of our healthcare facilities in combating the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you look at it in the next few days, if you look at the sort of capacities that we'll be creating, we'll be doing a very important role of bridging, by which time domestic capacities would have come into place. In the ministry itself, as I said, we have different teams working on different parts of it. We are very clear that this is the highest priority, and we will work extensively to make sure that the entire cooperation and coordination that we need with all of our partners, international partners, interlocutors all over the world will be smoothly interfaced with our domestic requirements and our domestic ministries and agencies that actually deal with this on the ground. So, for example, if we are getting a generating plant and the need is not in Delhi but in Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, flight can be sent straight there, and it can be, this equipment can be sent there. So the coordination is very, very minute to minute. It's also anticipatory. If a flight is coming on Saturday, we have already got the entire list. We've got the manifest. We've done all the clearances, the paperwork. Everything should be cleared quickly. We are also anticipating issues. For example, technical issues. You have 110 volts in the US. We have 220 volts here. How do you manage that? How do you anticipate that situation? In certain cases, installation is a problem because we're dealing with equipment from Russia, equipment from France, from Germany, from USA, from Singapore. How do you reconcile that with our own requirements? So all of these issues are those that we are trying to anticipate in advance, and that is where good coordination, good cooperation, and good synergies are very critical within our system. But it is a whole of government effort. So let me stop there, Arindam, and see if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, because it's a virtual format, we've got a lot of questions from journalist friends who joined in virtually. We also have some of them here. But since they're here, we will open the floor first to them. And then maybe we will do it topic-wise. So I know, sir, both of you are very pressed for time. So we'll take up a topic and perhaps just to take a few questions. Pranay, please. As is the norm, please introduce yourselves and your organization for our recording.
Forensically, Pranay Upadhyay, ABP News. मेरा सवाल इस चीज को लेके रेमडेसिविर की, जिस तरह से आपने कहा 67,000 प्रतिदिन हमारा प्रोडक्शन है और 2 से 3 लाख तक की डिमांड है, तो रेमडेसिविर की कमी को पूरा करने के लिए नेबरहुड में, चाहे बांग्लादेश हो या दूसरे देशों, वहां की कैपेसिटी या किन किन देशों को हम कैपेसिटी के तौर पर देख रहे हैं जहां प्रोडक्शन या स्टॉक अवेलेबल है और उन्हें सोर्स किया जा सकता है, इंक्लूडिंग यूएस और एनी अदर कंट्री?
देखिए, हमने पूरी कोशिश की है कि जितने सप्लाई सोर्सेज है रेमडेसिविर के, चाहे वो ओरिजिनल मैन्युफैक्चरर जो गिलियड साइंसेज के पास हो या उनके जो ऑथराइज्ड मैन्युफैक्चरर्स हो इजिप्ट में या इसराइल में या जहाँ भी हो, उनको हमने डायरेक्टली भी कांटेक्ट किया है। तो गिलियड साइंसेज ने तो कमिट किया है कि 4,50,000 डोज वो कंपनी की तरफ से ग्रेटिस बेसिस पे हमें देंगे। इसके अलावा हमने इजिप्ट को कांटेक्ट किया है जहाँ पे हम 4 लाख डोज और हमें उम्मीद है कि वहाँ से आ सकती है। हमें ये भी पता है कि बांग्लादेश में भी मैन्युफैक्चर हो रहा है, उज़्बेकिस्तान में भी कुछ स्टॉक्स हैं, यूएई में भी कुछ स्टॉक्स हैं। तो जहाँ भी स्टॉक्स हैं हम उनके साथ संपर्क कर रहे हैं और हम देख रहे हैं कि कैसे ये जल्दी से जल्दी हमारे देश में ये स्टॉक्स आ जाएं, ताकि ये जो शॉर्ट टर्म गैप जो मैंने बताया आपको उसको कवर कर सकें।
I'm Takesh Nabe from Asahi Shimbun, from Japanese media. What sort of support from Japanese government are there? And will you accept aid from Pakistan and China?
Sir, before we go on to that, on the issue of receiving assistance from China, we have a couple of other people. Manas from PTI has a similar question. Is there any policy and are we accepting help from China and Pakistan? We have also got similar queries from Deepak Ranjan from PTI Bhasha, Chandra Kala from ETV, who also mentioned the Chinese foreign minister has extended the invitation to join his anti-COVID initiative and our response. And Gautam Lahiri, who has asked whether there is any proposal from China to participate in vaccine cooperation in South Asia.
Well, Japan, let me just respond to the question by Asahi Shimbun first. Japan has been a very close partner in whatever areas of importance that are there in terms of international cooperation. And we're very happy that Japan has been responsive to many of our requirements. And here, Japan has offered us a number of items, including concentrators, ventilators, and pharmaceutical products. And of course, the means and details of this is yet to be elaborated, but the offer has been made, and I think it should be here quite soon. As far as your other question is concerned, and one that J6P has also alluded to, we know that number of companies in India have been sourcing products. I mentioned to you that companies have also been active in sourcing our priority requirements, be they oxygen generators, concentrators, pharmaceuticals, etc. And some of it is coming from China and is being sourced from China also. Cargo flights are operating, and some of this equipment is coming in, some of it is being sourced. But I think this is part of meeting the requirements from. Excuse me. Meeting requirements in, as I said, in the most effective manner possible. And our missions and posts have been asked to facilitate wherever required. There are issues of transportation. There are issues regarding, the speed at which we can get some of these products. So we are fully engaged in ensuring that many of this equipment and supplies are coming in as fast as possible.
Thank you. Yes, please.
हेलो सर, नीरज हूँ न्यूज 18 इंडिया से, नेटवर्क 18 ग्रुप से। सवाल हमारा ये है कि क्या विदेशों से सहायता लेने में भारत सरकार की नीति में कोई बदलाव हुआ है? और दूसरा सवाल ये है कि कई देशों ने अपने लोगों के लिए ट्रैवल एडवाइजरी जारी की है, अमेरिका, फ्रांस, जर्मनी, इसे आप कैसे देखते हैं?
We also have very similar queries, sir, on the flights from Huma from Financial Express, whether the Vande Bharat mission is going on, plans to restart, And from Nainima from the print, what is the status of several air bubble arrangements now that most countries have temporarily stopped taking Indians in their countries? On the change of policy aspects, sir, we have queries from Huma again. One second. I think that's, we had a couple of other queries. I'll come to that, sir, on the same issue of whether the policy, there is a policy change on accepting aid from other countries.
देखिए, ये जो स्थिति है, ये शायद हमने कभी देखा नहीं है पहले और शायद देखेंगे भी नहीं इसके बाद. It is an unprecedented situation. To respond to that, the questions that have been posed on this, we are dealing with a situation that is quite exceptional. We have certainly prioritized the items that we need. As I said, we are sourcing many of these items from many countries, but many countries have come forward on their own to offer us assistance. And you've seen that in many countries, I think the fact that we have been responsive to their needs when they had the requirement. Keep in mind that the United States, much of Europe, many other countries have had a second, even third wave. So in a certain sense, when we supplied essential pharmaceutical products, whether it is hydroxychloroquine, whether it is paracetamol, or even remdesivir at that time, or we supplied vaccines under our Vaccine Maitri program, there was appreciation that we came to the assistance of other countries in pursuit of what our Prime Minister calls working for the common good, or in our concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And today, those countries, if you see what President Biden said, what the United States said, what many Gulf countries have said, many of our other partners have said, we appreciated your assistance. We are today giving you assistance in return. We have given assistance, we are getting assistance. It shows an interdependent world. It shows a world that is working with each other. And I must say here, we have been in the forefront of generating that consciousness that the COVID-19 pandemic is not one that countries should be looking out for themselves only. Very early in the game, Prime Minister has talked about the fact that countries need to come together to cooperate. That is why he initiated the SAARC conference on COVID-19 in March, when this was a very new concept. He then initiated the call for a G20 summit, an extraordinary summit. The G20 has always met for financial or economic reasons, never met for humanitarian circumstances. And we have extensively, I think, even sometimes gone forward to assist countries where, they were very far away, they were not normally within our ambit. You saw so many Caribbean countries, Latin American countries, African countries. And today, these countries are coming forward and saying, what can we do? Mauritius offered us assistance. Bhutan has offered us, they said, we have 2 oxygen plants. Please use them for your requirements in Assam and West Bengal. Bangladesh is saying that we produce remdesivir. Please take some of our remdesivir. Why are these countries saying it? They're saying it because they feel that this is the time where we must help India. India has helped us, we must help India. So I don't think we are looking at it in policy terms. We are looking at it in terms of a situation that is very, very unusual, that is very unprecedented, that is very exceptional, and we will do whatever it takes to meet the requirements of our people at this point of time. As far as travel arrangements are concerned, the Vande Bharat flights, we are looking at the 10th, phase of the Vande Bharat mission. As I said, we have already transported 7 million of our people through this mission. It's been unprecedented from the point of view of the sheer movement of people who have been affected by lockdowns and between lockdowns. You have to keep in mind that, in terms of movement of people, any restrictions that are placed are temporary in nature. After all, when UK had an issue, then there was a temporary ban from our side. When there was an issue involving Europe, there was a temporary ban. When we had issues from Southeast Asia, we had put a ban. But they were temporary in nature. Similarly, we believe that many of these restrictions that you're talking about today, and we are in touch with all our interlocutors, they've all said, look, this is what we are doing, but this is only dependent on as long as the situation is there. This is not not even a medium-term thing. These are short-term measures. The second thing is that with most countries, we've ensured that at least we are open in terms of cargo connectivity. Air connectivity is there, whether it is the Gulf, whether it is Europe, whether it is America, whether it is Southeast Asia or China. The air connectivity should be open. Cargo should travel, and the essential supply chains that are involved should not be disrupted. तो अगर ये ट्रैवल की कोई समस्या हो, तो ये जितने भी हमारे रिस्ट्रिक्शंस हैं वो टेम्परेरी होंगे, शॉर्ट टर्म होंगे। जो हम देख रहे हैं हमारी तरफ से, विदेश मंत्रालय की तरफ से, और हमारे जितने भी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय पार्टनर्स हैं उनके साथ जो हमारे संपर्क है, जो हमारी चर्चा चल रही है, उसमें से स्थापित हो रहा है कि ये टेम्परेरी शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स हैं और इसमें डिस्ट्रप्शंस भी शॉर्ट टर्म होने चाहिए। और आप देख रहे हैं कि ये कर्व्स हैं, फर्स्ट वेव, सेकेंड वेव, ये आप देखेंगे कि काफ़ी हाई से लो भी हो जाता है। So whatever is there, we will recover, and when we do that, situation in terms of transport, in terms of air traffic and connectivity will be normalized.
So before, thank you, sir. That also answers the queries on the policy that Manas from PTI, Prashant from Asianet, and Rizal from Hindustan Times had asked. Next, yeah, please.
Hi, sir. Siddharth from Beyond. So are we planning to get vaccines also amidst this crisis? And also, how do you see the entire situation which is happening right now impacting our vaccine Maitri initiative? Because we have our own commitments to the international community when it comes to giving them vaccines.
So before that, we also on vaccine actually has elicited some more questions. Gautam Lahiri wants an update on vaccine Maitri program. Is it on hold now? Sudhir Ranjan from Bloomberg wants to know about the vaccines that India was supposed to send to countries but could not because of this surge. How much of this is commercial or how much are under pledged category? Any timeline on when these countries will get these vaccines? Deepak Ranjan from PTI Bhasha wants to know more about the assistance that we've got vaccine related. And Anish from Asianet has the local demand for vaccines impacted our COVAX and vaccine Maitri commitments? Are we still exporting vaccines?
So I spoke about an interdependent world where we have given and we are taking also. In anything that you do, there is a supply chain. You produce pharmaceuticals, but someone provides you with some ingredients of that. You provide someone with the finished product, and so on and so forth. I think vaccine has to be seen in that context. When we started our vaccine program, a good part of it was also to do with international cooperation. COVAX was involved. In the case of SI, AstraZeneca was involved. We also had an indigenous vaccine, which is Bharat Biotech, but they also have very extensive cooperation with R&D and centers and companies across the world. When we were in a position to, I think we did, as I mentioned, provide vaccine under Vaccine Maitri. Today, our needs are far greater, and I believe all our partners understand that in this context, what we require is really ramping up of our vaccination program. We have to, 2 to 3 million, we have to go up significantly in that context. From the 1st of May, we will have made it universal to anybody who's over 18 years of age. That also requires, as you've seen, a very large number of people have registered for that vaccination. And we will have to make sure that we have the necessary capacity to cater to that. And in that context, obviously, if we can source vaccines, we will do it. Whether it's from the United States, whether it's from Russia, whether it's from other countries who have and manufacture vaccines, we will do it. You've seen the Sputnik collaboration, that Sputnik has with Dr. Reddy's and other companies. I think from May you will start seeing some of those vaccines come in, then on a fill and finish basis, and then finally being manufactured in India. A good 60% of any Sputnik vaccine in the world will be manufactured in India. But for the time being, I think our requirement is very significant, very, very pressing, and I think whatever we produce and whatever we can get from other manufacturers will be used for our domestic vaccine program.
Thank you, sir. That actually your answer also covers a query from Huma from Financial Express, wanted to know when the Russian vaccine would be available. Next, please.
Sir, Pradeep Kumar from Business Economics and Samachar Post. Both are in English. So, what I am asking you, Foreign Secretary Sir, Supreme Court and as well as Delhi High Court, the statement which has, for the pandemic situation, how do you see that? Any comments from?
That's not.
That is mainly, something that our domestic authorities, in terms of health authorities, will be more competent to respond to. Obviously, whatever judicial and legal related proceedings are there, and whatever is decided by the Honorable Supreme Court and High Courts is something that government is incumbent to follow. But I don't want to comment on that simply because I'm not competent, and B, probably not adequately informed to be able to do justice to your question.
Thank you, sir. Last question.
I have a couple of questions, but first a clarification. The Secretary Transport and Highways is the person who's handling distribution of the aid that's coming in. Is my understanding correct on that front?
No, I clarified that the Empowered Group 2. There are several empowered groups dealing with many of this. There's an empowered group under CEO of Niti Aayog that deals with corporate-related cooperation. There is Empowered Group 2, which is doing the sourcing. This is a special group that's been constituted of secretaries, in which MEA is also represented, which looks at where we can immediately buy items that we critically need for our domestic healthcare requirements to deal with the COVID crisis. That is currently being chaired by the Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. So, that is one aspect of this.
Sorry, what was the question?
Okay, my questions basically are on the foreign policy front. There are reports suggesting that there has been a shift in foreign policy in India receiving aid. Now, has there been a shift? Secondly, on remdesivir, we're taking remdesivir from various countries. The stockpiles that you mentioned, could they be stockpiles that have been sourced from Pakistan? Could this be a third country transfer to India?
So the first question you answered.
I've already answered that quite extensively. And remdesivir, as I said, we are in contact with the main manufacturers in Egypt. Gilead itself is guiding us on where we can buy it from, and Gilead, as the parent company, is best placed to tell us where we can source these products from, and we are in close touch with them, and we will garner up whatever resources there are that are available to meet our immediate shortfall in remdesivir requirements.
There are no questions further from the floor, but I had two sets of small questions, sir, which have come. One was a lot of interest in what the US support was given. There was talking about raw materials for Covishield manufacturer. This is from Elizabeth from Lightman. But what about Covovax? And supply raw material for that. Has the US government given any specific details about supplying ready-to-use vaccines? That's from Manas from PTI. Deepak Ranjan from PTI Bhasha had this query about the discussions that Honorable Prime Minister had with the President of US and President of Russia recently, and whether issues relating to vaccines as well as other COVID-related assistance was discussed. Nirendra Dev speculates that the delay in US assistance to India is related to our procurement deal with Russia. And also there are some queries about if there's US giving any other assistance. I think some of it is answered, so if you'd like to add anything further.
I did mention that the Prime Minister had a very good conversation with President Biden of the United States. He also had a very good conversation with President Putin of the Russian Federation. Both very, very critical partners, and both, I think, offered assistance, extensive assistance to India. And I think the question also went into what sort of assistance there was. I'll try and give you some. As I said, from the United States, 28 million liters of oxygen and transport, including 1,100 cylinders in the first shipment. We're talking about 3 aircraft loads of equipment arriving over the next tomorrow and up to 3rd of May. And then subsequently, as and when this is available, we're talking about 2,000 oxygen concentrators. We are talking about 20,000 remdesivir vials. We are talking about rapid diagnostic test kits. We are talking about oxygen generating plants, 17 deployable oxygen generating units, as well as additional units, large scale units that support larger number of patients, field oxygen and field hospitals, mobile field hospitals, and there's a very large list of other items, ventilators, etc. With regard to Russia as well, we have some fairly extensive list of items that have been conveyed, but as I said, I mean, this is includes oxygen generating sets, which can take into account, which produces its own oxygens, like small mini oxygen plants. We've got ventilators, bedside monitors, favipiravir. So, I would think that this is something that what we are talking about is in the first instance, and which is something that will be provided as quickly as possible. And again, in the case of Russia, we've already had flights come in, probably have more flights come in. So, international partners, whether it is the United States, whether it's Russia, whether it's UK, France, Germany, Southeast Asia, Gulf countries, have been very, very much, and our own neighbors have been extensively, I would say, generous and forthcoming in responding to the situation on their own. As I said, they have offered this assistance on their own, and many of these countries have put it in a context of the assistance that they have received from India in the past, in the first wave of the COVID crisis, and I think there is a certain appreciation for our own, efforts in that regard. And I think if today countries are coming forward so spontaneously to support our efforts, it is also part of our own, I would say, international cooperation and the goodwill, the global goodwill that has been generated over the past year or two, or several years, even before that. But I would say that what is important today is that our international partnerships, our global network of friends and partners, the extensive work that has been going on at the highest levels, right down to the basic functional levels, in building bridges, in building partnerships, in creating the sort of goodwill that is important, is I think holding us in good stead today. When we require it, countries are coming forward, organizations are coming forward, corporates are coming forward, individuals are coming forward, and this is something that when we talk about international cooperation, it means all of that, and including what we are doing commercially in terms of supplementing our domestic resources to fight this second wave of the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, sir. And the final set of questions, and of course you answered a lot of this, so depending on which element. Saurabh Shukla from News Mobile is crediting our vaccine Maitri for the success and that we are getting this. But he's saying, what is our message? What is specific ask that we have from the international community? We also have smaller questions from Huma from Financial Exchange saying, which other countries have sent oxygen-related material? Anish from Asianet saying, which are the details of consignment and grant received? Prashant from Asianet on assistance offered specifically by Gulf nations. And also Tripti Nath, who is asking about, it's very good that we have all this lending a helping hand, but what are the transparency mechanisms that we have so that this help reaches target beneficiaries in every nook and corner of India? And finally, Devi Rupa from The Wire is talking about that some states are hit more than others. Have any country asked for the resources to be directed to specific states, and what is our policy in that situation? And also, are our embassies or missions helping state governments procuring it, or do they have to go through the commercial channels? Thanks.
Well, starting with the vaccine program, the entire vaccine production on a global basis is based on international cooperation. We have been members of COVAX. We've contributed to COVAX. COVAX has also, in some ways, assisted us in our own, R&D efforts in the development of the vaccine industry. And today, if you're looking at, give and take in terms of vaccines, that is a part of that international cooperation. Now, it's very clear that India is a major manufacturer of vaccines. We've seen the Quad partnership on vaccines, in which we are getting funding and support from the United States and Japan for creating additional capacities that could enable both the manufacture and export of vaccines from India into the Indo-Pacific, in particular Southeast Asia. That is going very well. That is a program that I think is proceeding well. It takes a bit of time because creating capacities in vaccines is not an overnight business. It needs a lot of investment. It needs a lot of additional, I would say, both civil works and at the scientific end, a lot of work that has to be done there. But the cooperation is proceeding very well. Without cooperation between us and our major partners in the international vaccine cooperation, whether it's the United States, Japan, whether it's Australia, but also I mentioned Russia and Sputnik, a host of countries that are involved, I think we will not be able to, adequately deal with the COVID crisis. It's only when you create those capacities, when you create the ability to manufacture vaccines that are not only required within our country, but also all over the world, that we will be able to effectively deal with this crisis. And our objective is not only to surmount our requirements here, but also to make sure that we have surpluses at any given time that can be exported. So as we speak, massive additional capacities in vaccines are being created. You've seen that Bharat Biotech is ramping up production. It's going, tripling and quadrupling its production. SII has very ambitious plans to expand its productions. You've got new vaccines coming into the market, whether it's Sputnik, whether it is other companies that are coming in. And we will, I think, in the next 2 to 3 months, you will see a significant increase in the capacities, a very, very significant increase. So here, I think, is where international cooperation in vaccines becomes effective. What I'm trying to say is, without India and without that partnership that we are looking at, meeting the COVID challenge, whether it's in our own country or whether it's all over the world. And what is one lesson that we've got from this is that COVID is not something that you can deal with your country and say, I'm okay. COVID is global in nature. Unless you eradicate COVID all over the world, you're not going to be safe from that. You cannot have islands of, areas which are completely COVID-free and, places which have large incidence of COVID. Cooperation is needed to get rid of COVID on a global basis. So partnership and cooperation is absolutely critical, and that is something we'll do. And the second point which I made earlier is that there are waves. It comes, it peaks, it goes down. In countries, it has had, in all countries, these waves have been very devastating. In our country, because we have a larger population, there's a greater density of population. The impact is obviously felt in a way which is different, but we will also, I think, as in many other countries, have to deal with it through our own resources, and wherever we can, we deal with it through international cooperation. The other questions, I believe, was also the countries that are involved. Just to give you a sense, I've already mentioned some of our partners, but I also mentioned countries like Singapore, Mauritius, UAE, Romania, Bahrain, Uzbekistan, Kuwait, Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Poland, Czech Republic, Portugal, Luxembourg, Austria, Denmark, Mexico, Israel, Guyana, Canada, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Switzerland, Vietnam. So what I'm saying is that, over 40 countries, a very large number of countries, and all of them are contributing extensively, and this is the larger message. It is not a question of which countries and what contribution. I think what is important is that every country, many countries have come forward on their own and are providing us with that partnership that is in many senses important to us in meeting this current situation. Was there any other part?
On the coordination with states and transparency, and you should goes to that.
Well, yes, I think the issue was that what happens when this comes in and how do you decide where it goes and so on and so forth. And this is, of course, the competent authorities, the health ministry, that has a very good idea about where the requirements are greatest. There is a committee that decides about the allocations. What we are trying to do is, and we are also part of that efforts, because we are trying to do is that if certain things come in, we try to make sure that it goes there as quickly as possible. But obviously, the people who deal with the, health infrastructure is best placed to be able to say where the needs are greatest and which states and which areas, parts of the country where requirements are most imminent and pressing. At this point of time, I think the central government is doing much of the sourcing, and central government will make those resources available to the state governments because we are best placed to garner those resources. The MEA has extensive network through our embassies and through the network of contacts, not just state to state, but with, as I said, corporates, associations, groups, etc. We will do what it takes to get the most effective means and the fastest means of this equipment and get it across to those people who need it most, including many of our states that require these.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sparing your time. That brings us. So I think we'll close it. Anything additional which is not covered?
So I wanted to on one as well. These are the US companies basically. Indian government and the US government have said that there are no disruptions from the Chinese side, but the US companies, particularly Mukesh Aghi, has said that they have faced disruptions in the aid that they're trying to, or resources that they're trying to mobilize from China into India. Have they raised those concerns with the Indian government?
Well, I did check with our embassy in Beijing this morning about flights, particularly cargo flights bringing in equipment, and I'm told that a very large number of flights are operational. I'm happy to share the list with you if I have not already done so. But Sichuan Airlines, which has about 10 flights a day, has suspended operations, and that, of course, has an impact on some of the supplies coming in. Our endeavor is to try and ensure that air connectivity, at least in cargo terms, with countries is kept open, and certainly we will be in touch with the authorities in China to have as much of this connectivity open at this critical time as possible.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your presence here as well as